to Paper Crafters Library. In this video I'm going to show you how to create this Just Because button card. So let's get started. You're going to need a piece of River Rock cardstock that measures 5 1/4 by 10 1/2. I've gone ahead and I've scored it down the center at 5 1/4 to create a 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 inch card base. Once you fold along that crease line with your bone folder. So now you have your card base. You're going to set this aside for a moment, and you're now going to need a piece of designer paper, and this piece is cut to 4 5/8 by 4 5/8 inch square. You're then going to need a piece of ebony cardstock that measures 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. And this designer paper I'll be using in creating this entire pack, or entire card, is all of the patterns are found in the Memoir collection from Studio Calico. So we're going to center and stick our 4 5/8 by 4 5/8 inch piece of designer paper to our ebony cardstock with double-sided adhesive, leaving equal borders on all 4 sides. You're now going to stamp your greeting. And you want to stamp your greeting about 2 inches up from the bottom. So if you can use your grid paper or a ruler, you just want to make sure that you stamp your greeting, like I said, about 2 inches up from the bottom, because the rest of your card embellishments are going to be in this bottom right hand corner. So I'm stamping the Just Because greeting found in my Hero Arts stamp set. And it's just, I'm not quite sure of the name, but it's just got these big cupcake and big balloons in it, so it's a birthday greeting of some sort. So, and this greeting was actually cut apart from a larger greeting, so I just wanted the Just Because section of that. I'm going to be stamping that using my Ranger Jet Black Archival ink, and because it's a clear block I can see through it, so I'm just making sure that my cardstock is straight on my grid paper. I can see where my 2 inch line will be, and I'm just going to stamp that about halfway up, like I said, 2 inches up on the right hand side. So you can set aside your ink and your stamp, and you're now going to start to embellish the side of this. I actually kept my pieces quite long for my embellishments, and that's because I'm just going to cut them to size as I work. So I have a piece of zipper trim here, and that's from May Arts. I have some designer paper found in that same collection. Here is a 1/2 inch piece of designer paper in this aqua color, and then I have this piece cut to 3/4 of an inch, and then I have a piece of old olive cardstock that coordinates with my designer paper, and this is again 1/2 inch, and I have a piece of Island Indigo cardstock cut at 1/8 of an inch. So I'm just going to layer all of my elements there. I'm going to actually take my piece of zipper trim, and I want to trim it down a little bit, so I'm going to cut this down to about a 3 inch size piece. So I'm just going to lay this on my grid paper and cut that down to approximately 3 inches in size. I'm going to stick that to the back of my patterned paper here, and this is, again, like I said, from that Memoir collection. So I'm just going to apply some double-sided adhesive to the bottom portion of my zipper trim, and I'm actually going to leave some of my designer paper longer on either end of my zipper trim. So I'm just going to take my snips and cut my designer paper a little bit longer than my zipper was. So this ends up being about a 3 1/2 inch piece. Then I'm just going to lay out my pattern of my designer paper just below my greeting in order to trim them to size. So you're just going to keep playing with your pattern until you're happy with the layout. And I'm just going to tuck in my little one on an angle here, filling in this bottom right hand corner. So each card will be somewhat different because you may have certain ones a little longer than others. Just keep playing with it until you're happy with your layout. I'm actually going to put this on top of there so I can see some more color in behind my olive piece. So I'm going to trim my 1/8 of an inch piece of Island Indigo just so it comes down in that bottom corner. My aqua pattern, trim it down to size, and my olive pattern. I'm actually going to trim this down a little bit smaller. Once you have all of your pieces trimmed down to size, then we're going to start sticking them down. So I'm going to stick my first pattern down just below my greeting with my double-sided adhesive. Then you're going to stick your piece of designer paper down that has the ribbon trim, and I'm going to use some red liner tape for that, and that's only because the zipper trim is on the back of your designer paper. You can sandwich the ends or sandwich the zipper trim on to your designer paper using your red liner tape, and it's already stuck down with your double-sided adhesive, but I just want to make sure that it's got a really firm grip to my cardstock once I'm ready to stick this down. I'm going to add some double-sided adhesive to my 1/8 of an inch piece of cardstock here, and a good trick for that is I know that my tape runner is a little bit wider than my cardstock, so I'm just going to run it along there and just wipe off with my hands up the sides of my cardstock any excess adhesive that's on there. So that I'm just going to lay that back across here on that angle into the bottom right hand corner. Then I'm going to stick down my different cardstocks. I know that I ran my red liner tape about the middle of my cardstock there, so I'm just going to slide in my olive piece underneath there. And once you have those all in place, then our last embellishment will be to add some buttons. Now I found these buttons. They're 9 to 5 buttons from October Afternoon, and they coordinate well with my cardstock. So I'm just going to pull out 3 buttons, a small, medium, and a large button in 3 different colors, coordinating them with my cardstock. And go ahead and set aside your excess buttons, and now you're going to run some black jute through the center of each button. And in order to do so, I like to work on the spool because you never know how much you'll actually need to insert through each button. You'll just need tiny pieces, so you don't want to have wastage if you can avoid it. So I'm just threading my button or my black jute through my buttonholes, and then I'm going to use some mini glue dots to adhere the ends to the back of the button, sticking them down. Then you can trim off the end and stick that down to the mini glue dot as well. So you're going to repeat that with all of your buttons, threading through your buttonholes. So now that all of your buttons have been threaded through with your black jute, you're now going to stick them down to the front of your cardstock here, your designer paper embellishment. So I'm just using a couple of mini glue dots on the back of each button, and I'm going to put them in a cluster in the bottom right hand corner. So once you have those clustered in that bottom right hand corner, you're now ready to add this to your card base. So you can bring your card base back in, and you're going to stick your matted designer paper to your card base using some Stampin' Dimensionals. So I'm going to place a Stampin' Dimensional in each of the 4 corners. Remove the backings. You're going to center and stick that to your card base, leaving equal borders on all 4 sides. And there you have your finished Just Because button card. I hope you enjoyed stamping with me.